What we're going to be talking about here today is how to repair a refrigerator, particularly a Whirlpool side-by-side refrigerator, model number listed there. The combination start device and the condenser motor cooling fan had burned out. A little history with this refrigerator. It had received a short a number of years ago that had burned up the freezer evaporator fan motor. I was able to purchase that from Appliance Zone and do a quick swap out. Basically, all it was is right here's the fan motor of the evaporator fan motor inside the freezer. It's just a couple screws and then unplug it and swap out a new one. The components you can't replace any of the capacitors resistors because it's encased in glue, and there's no way of taking it apart to get to that. For the combination start device and the condenser fan motor, what I ended up doing was this refrigerator received another surge in 2012, and I ended up calling out a technician to determine what was wrong with it. After I did some troubleshooting, I couldn't find it figured out. Um, Here's the start device, and then that kicks on the condenser motor. And then here's the condenser fan motor, which helps keep the condenser cool. Some things to keep in mind before you get started. This is not a step-by-step exact way of repairing or testing a refrigerator. Mainly, I just wanted to try and prevent or urge those that don't have the expertise from doing this. If you do have some appliance background or electrical background, there's no reason why you probably can't go ahead and repair this. I am not a certified appliance repair technician, but I do have a major Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering and Technology. Some other things to keep in mind before you get started is that most technicians, they won't repair individual components such as the capacitors, resistors, inductors, any of those devices on the circuit board. They'd replace a whole part, the whole motor, just because it's not really effective for them to come out and diagnose which component is failing when they can just swap out the whole part and pass that cost on to you. If your refrigerator, starts up but the condenser doesn't kick in, that could be the cause of the from the start device had failed. And then if you look back there, you can also see the fan motor. This is all in the back of the refrigerator freezer. On the bottom, there's a little cardboard covering that you can take off and look in the bottom and see these components. Uh, the easiest way, obviously, to check for the start devices, I had a similar refrigerator that I just swapped them out and put the new start device from an older refrigerator in there, and then the condenser started up. That's about all that I know how for the start device. Unless you pull it apart and start checking the capacitors, which is what we'll talk about. For the condenser fan motor, if the refrigerator is on and the condenser is warm or hot, the fan motor should kick in. If you do a voltage check on the wires and there's voltage going to them 118, 120 volts, then there's obviously an issue with your fan motor if it's not coming on. And that's when I would proceed to start taking them apart. Some of the equipment that you'll need is a multimeter that's able to test for capacitance, since you're going to be checking the capacitors. Soldering iron, screwdrivers. Super glue is used to, I'll talk about that a little bit later on. Here's the components. You can see I was able to do this cost for about $1, but bought new parts, bought the new evaporator fan motor and the start device just in case these end up failing in the future and I need a quick swap. The startup device, obviously before you go to start doing any work on this, you want to make sure that you have the refrigerator disconnected, and keep in mind that capacitors still could be charged up. When you pry out the tabs, when you pry out these tabs, they could potentially break. That's where I ended up using some super glue, a little bit on either side, just to hold it together, and you can see part of the tab that broke off and it's still sitting there. Um, Once you open it up, you'll see the circuit board, and then these are the two capacitors that I checked. Uh, this is the particular one that ended up failing with mine, the electrolytic capacitor. It's a 50 volt, 22 microfarad. The parts are listed above in the slides. I think it ended up reading about 3.8 microfarads when I tested it. This large capacitor, I did a test on it and it didn't give me a reading. I'm not exactly certain why, uh, but I knew it was good because I've put this inside another refrigerator and that one had worked just fine. Um, so then once you go ahead and you find out which of these components have failed, you just simply put it back together. Before you glue it, I would just wrap some tape around it and then plug it back into the condenser and determine if it comes on. Plug the refrigerator back in, and then the condenser motor should kick in shortly. If that doesn't work, then if these were bad, then you might likely have one of the control modules is probably burnt out too. Once again, whenever there's a power surge, it's usually a capacitor or an MOV, metal oxide ferroresistor, that is potentially blown. For the condenser fan motor, um, it was pretty obvious once I cracked it open, and you could see that the MOV had completely bursted apart. This is kind of indicative of what you might see on a electrolytic capacitor, where the cap could blow off and the case be deformed. But the MOV was burnt up, and then you can see a little bit of charring here, and then the fuse had completely blown. When you buy the components, you could go ahead and buy a fuse with pigtails, or you can kind of make your own. You just solder them to the side of the fuse and solder it to the circuit board. One thing to keep in mind though is if you overheat this too much, you could mess up the fuse. One thing you can do is a continuity check after you place this component, place the fuse inside there, and ensure that you have continuity. The MOV that I used, I pulled it out of an old TV circuit board and placed it in here, and it ended up working just fine. Not something that I really recommend. I'd get the part that I have listed above, because this is not exactly the right one. It actually has a little bit higher rating. So if this burns out or receives a surge again, other parts such as these coils could end up burning up. Shoot, it could even create a fire, but kind of unlikely. And then anyways, you go ahead and after you check those components, place it back together, plug it in, and voila, fan will kick on. At least that was my experience. I hope this helps. Any technicians replace individual components, they attempt to go that route, or any electronic gurus, help them save some money. Had I had the technician replace all components, it would have cost me about $180. So uh, reality for the cost of the technician coming out, which is about $65, telling me exactly what was wrong, and then $1 in parts. Had I went out and bought these individual capacitors, I happen to have the stuff lying around, uh, pretty easy to fix. So good luck, and hope it works out for you.